Okay, we are going to I'm going to hopefully give you two chapters today. Chapter 8 on color corrections and Chapter 9 on outputting in various formats for the web and or Creative Cloud. So in this lesson, in Chapter 8, we're going to deal with Premiere Pro, and we're going to learn about the different color correcting options built within here. So we're going to open and we're going to navigate to our lesson folder and Chapter 8. So we're going to find the Lesson 8, Start PR Project, and we're going to open that. And we are going to rename it. We're going to keep it in Lesson 8, but this time we're going to call it Poolside Edit 06. And go ahead and say OK and open that. All right, once your file's open and it's saved as Poolside Edit 06, we need to talk a little bit about the basics of color correction. So before we render and output our final movie, it's kind of some standard procedure now. We have our audio track in that we go back and we really look at each of the clips and see if anything needs color correcting or to match and balance the rest of the video clips. We want to make sure that they're consistent in terms of hue, saturation, and brightness. If you're putting this on TV, there are some broadcast standards that you need to be aware of, but I think that's a little bit over the top for what we're doing right now and for this limited view of this software that we're taking right now. So one thing that we are going to do is color correcting, just like we do kind of in Photoshop, where we balance out based on highlights, midtones, and shadows. And then color grading also involves selectively adjusting the color of a video by using masks and color correcting tools. So we can draw attention to certain things in the frame and perhaps help tell the story a little bit better. An example of color grading could be used to colorize a sequence to make it appear as though it were shot on old film stock, like long time ago, or maybe we would use a preset that makes it look like it was shot during the day, but it looks like it was shot at night. So you can think of Photoshop Camera Raw when we would apply some white balance changes and change, a day picture, we'd really cool it off. So we are going to jump into using the three-way color monitor. So the first thing we need to do is switch this to the color workspace. So if we click on this, we're going to see color, and hopefully in a minute we're going to get something look a little bit different here. I want you to notice that in window workspace there are two things. There's color and color correction. So it doesn't really matter which one we use. I'm going to go back to the workspace called color. I think that's the one I just practiced through. Once you know, I've already forgotten. All right, let's see if this is the right one. If not, we'll know it pretty quickly. First thing I want you to do is look down at the bottom left. This is where you have your project panel, and you have a media browser, effects, markers, all this different thing. I'm going to turn on the effects window, just have that available. And I'm also going to change this line a little bit. I want some more of my I want more of my timeline showing, and I have a really big audio. It's really tall. I don't necessarily need that. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is our very first clip in the movie, which is Interview Jeff. I'll zoom in on that. We're going to give this some color correcting. You can tell it's got kind of a yellowish, warmish hue to it, and we want to fix that. So we are going to select that clip with your selection tool, and then we're going to come over here, and if you haven't already, make sure you're in the effects panel, not in your project panel or anything else. And in the search bar, we're looking for the three-way color corrector. So just start typing in the word 3, and we do see it down here, three-way color corrector. We are going to use that. We're going to double click on it, and that's going to apply it to the clip in the timeline that we've already chosen. Before we move on, we're going to come back here and click to X that out of our search bar so that we're not stuck with that always there. All right, now we need to look at our effect controls. So the effect controls are not showing, so I must have been in a different version, but it doesn't matter. Shift number 7 should bring up effect controls. Oh, for goodness gracious. There we go. Shift F5, my bad. All right. Oh yeah, if I would have read a little further down, Shift 5 is effect controls. So now that we have the 3-way color corrector applied to this clip, this is what we're seeing are these 3 wheels: shadows, midtones, and highlights. So we're going to basically trust our eyes. So hopefully the monitor that you're working with is, in real life is color calibrated recently and is done well enough that you trust what you're seeing. So we're going to start with this image, and the walls should be white. They kind of look like cream or yellow. So the first thing we're going to do is over here we're going to click on the eyedropper for the highlights, and then we're going to come over in here and we're going to sample an area that should be white. So I'm going to go right above his arm here where the wall should be white, and I'm going to click. And that just set that to be our white point. Then I'm going to come over and grab the mid-tone eyedropper, and something that should be a neutral gray are any of these shadows that are being thrown from these wood slats. So I'm just going to click here to set that as neutral gray. And then shadows, what's the black point? I'm going to go somewhere on his jacket that's really, really dark. So maybe right down here in this area. I'm going to click here. If you're not happy with your white point or you think it needs tweaking, you can always go back and work on these. So if you want to do your highlights again. Okay, so that brightened it up a little bit. It's definitely not stark white, but it's not as warm as it was. So if you want to see what it looks like before, if you come over to the Effect Controls panel where this FX symbol is in front of the 3-way color corrector, you can click on that to turn it off and click on it to turn it on. So as I'm clicking back and forth, I'm definitely seeing a difference in his face is getting warmer. The original is much more warm and yellow. And when it's turned on, it's a little bit more balanced. All right, so a few more interview clips need color correcting too. We're going to use this 3-way color corrector, but rather than apply the effect from the effects panel like we just did, we're going to copy Interview Jeff in the timeline and paste these attributes onto other clips and then make changes as necessary. So in the timeline, click to select Interview with Jeff and then copy it. So Command C. Then we're going to take our playhead timeline ahead until we find the interview with Philip. So here we have the interview with Philip, and I'm going to click to select that. Once we have it selected, we're going to right-click on this clip, and we're going to choose Paste Attributes. So we're not pasting the actual video file, just the special attributes. And it says, okay, which ones do you want? If any of these were turned on other than the 3-way corrector, we would turn them off. But that's all that's applied to the original one, and that's all that we want to copy, so this is fine. We just want the 3-way color corrector to be in effect. So click OK, and you can see that this clip, the Philip clip, now has the 3-way color corrector activated. And in the effect control panel, we can do what we just did before. So we're going to take the highlight eyedropper, and what is the brightest part that should be the brightest white, and it's kind of this shine or reflection up here on the wood bar. So I'm going to sample in there as our bright point. The mid-tone in here needs to be a neutral gray, so I'm going to go with something in his gray sweater. And then the dark shadow, he has like a black t-shirt on underneath here, so we're going to click on that. All right, this still is a little dark and dingy, so perhaps your view only shows these 3 wheels or not even what's underneath them. Make sure you pull this down and you can see that there's a lot of other options. But the one that we're going to work with is the input levels, which has black, white, excuse me, and gray sliders. So this is a lot like using levels in Photoshop. So we're going to take the white and we're going to start pulling it to the left until we brighten it up. So if you watch the picture, you can see how extreme things are getting. This is like moving the white point on levels and bumping it over to where the mountain of data is when we see that stack. So nothing is totally white, so we're going to push the white point over. You would do this by your eye, but the number that they're talking about in the book, so we're on the same page, is around 202 right here for the white point. So that really brightened it up. All right, now we're going to do something similar with Dwight number 2. This time, though, we're going to copy and paste the effects. So with our Philip still up in front of us, up in our effects panel, effect controls up here, we are going to click on the name 3-way color corrector up here, and we're going to copy it, Command C. Now we're going to move ahead in our timeline to the interview with Dwight number 2. So it's the next clip in line. Whoops. Interview with Dwight number 2. Select this clip in your timeline and paste, Command V. And now with the Dwight clip up here, we have the 3-way color corrector applied. We're going to sample highlights. And on Dwight, this again should be a whitish wall, so we're going to kind of sample up here in the bright spot. The mid-tone that we're going to sample, we're going to do this gray shadow that's being cast here. That helped a lot. And then for the black point, we're going to go inside the neck of his shirt here. So that also made a good impact. Now notice that the input level of 202 that we had previously also came along when we copied and pasted. So we could play with this. This one even needs to be a little bit brighter. We're going to take it to 193-ish. You can type in the number or you can pull your slider. Remember, in real life, you're going to be watching visually, not typing in numbers. All right, a couple more. Let's go to interview Adam 1. That's our next clip right here. Select this clip and Command V to paste the same options onto this one. And with our highlights, the brightest spot is going to be this wall to the right of his ear. We're going to sample that. The mid-tone on this image is going to be closer to his neck, this area right in here that should be a neutral gray. And no color cast anyway. And then the shadow highlight that we're going to choose, whoa, everything just got funky, is the inside of his collar as well. So I click on that. So that got all 3 of those. And you can see the little swatch underneath here. It's like tan, brown, and black are the areas that we actually sampled. Our input slider, we are going to drag this one to about 200. And finally, we're going to color correct interview Tyler 1, which is probably the next one in line. Yep, there we go. Move your playhead down. Select interview Tyler 1. And Command V again to paste that effect. And this time, instead of letting all these things be here as they are, we're going to click on the reset button. And it's going to be at the far right of the 3-way color corrector. So here's our 3-way color corrector right up here. And at the far right, we have the reset effect. So if we click on that, everything goes back to 0. Highlights are white, gray, and black here respectively. So click on our highlight sample. And the bright spot here is this white shape above his finger. Sample that. The mid-tone is going to be this gray wall behind his hand. And the shadow or dark point in this one is going to be this speaker behind him. And if you feel the need to do any input levels with this, you can pull on this slider as well. So at this point, we are good and we can save our project. So File, Save, or Command S.